Hi, I'm Kalis, and I'm here to talk about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl in romantic films. Now, we're all familiar with what a romantic film is, but what are Manic Pixie Dream Girls? Contemporarily speaking, it is a relatively new term, but audiences might already recognize the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope by their distinct traits, their brightly colored hair and perhaps offbeat sense of fashion. They have a quirky personality and an effervescent desire to live life to the fullest, exceptionally fearless of all the challenges that come their way.
Penis!
In 2007, Nathan Rabin, a film critic, defined Manic Pixie Dream Girls as that bubbly, shallow cinematic creature that exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. Go online, there are already countless video essays that talk about this trope and what they actually bring to the narrative of the story. But in this video essay, I would like to deconstruct the trope's meaning and representations from a different perspective, a different gaze, more specifically, the male gaze. The male gaze was a term coined by Laura Mulvey, a feminist film critic who used political psychoanalysis to describe females' roles in movies. Mulvey argues that women in movies are influenced by gender-based power force in cinema that is constructed for the eyes of the male pleasure. In a world ordered by sexual imbalance, pleasure in looking has been split between active male and passive female. The determining male gaze projects its fantasy onto the female figure, which is styled accordingly. In a traditional exhibitionist role, women are simultaneously looked at and displayed, with their appearance coded for strong visual and erotic impact, so that they can be said to connote to be looked at-ness. Often we can see these objects of desire in other tropes, like the girl next door, the cool girl, or the femme fatale. This theoretical framework is supported by art critic John Berger. In his ways of seeing, he compares this gaze from history, how even paintings from the Renaissance period displays the women for the male audience. According to him, men look at women, women watch themselves being looked at. Romantic movies and the narratives are often written for the female audience. Rom-coms serve as a form of escapism, a comic reflection on gender, self, and gives a voice to our desires to be wanted and frame it in a funny way. But, negating the actual genre, both male and female audience members project themselves to the characters they see on the big screen. Mulvey describes this as the phallocentric order, in which the male audience latches onto a screen surrogate. For example, given the era in which the Manic Pixie Dream Girl was coined, the nice guy trope was still prevalent in media. From 2000 to 2010, popular franchises like Friends and How I Met Your Mother featured relatable good guys that are persistent in their attempts for love. Characters like Ted Mosby and Ross Geller are identified as the nice guy that is often brushed aside by attractive women due to their struggles with being more confident and attractive. In their pursuit of love, these male characters often project their idea or fantasy of what their own understanding of what love is to their objects of desire. For example, in 500 Days of Summer, a movie told from Tom's point of view about his year-long relationship with Summer, Tom latches onto Summer as his soulmate from the moment she expressed an interest in his musical taste. He ignores her stance when Summer says she is not interested in being in a relationship, but more on that later. It is under this lens that the fundamentals of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope is formed, a love interest that fulfills the male protagonist's interests. According to Rosalind Gill, media reflects reality, and thus produced and constituted understandings, subjectivities, and visions of the world. This insight extended to gender. Rather than there be a pre-existing reality to the meaning of the categories masculine and feminine, the media were involved in actively producing gender. Stuart Hall argues how encoding and decoding messages are heavily reliant on social and economic structures. According to him, people have assumed that therefore what this is doing is a powerful way of circulating in the world a very limited range of definitions of who people can be, of what they can do, what are the possibilities in life, what are the natures of the constraints on them. Now that the foundations are laid, we can dissect the trope more closely. Here, I will study the Manic Pixie Dream Girl character by sampling first Claire from Elizabethtown and then Summer from 500 Days of Summer. Elizabethtown centers around Drew. The movie chronicles his travels to Elizabethtown. On his journey there, he meets Claire. Claire is often described by film critics as the quintessential Manic Pixie Dream Girl. In fact, it was her character that the term was originally coined from. At first glance, she hits all the fundamental traits. She's pretty, attractive, and has many quirky habits, like the photo snap thing she does every time she catalogs something she thinks is worth remembering. In the movie, Claire appears and immediately forces herself towards Drew. She is confident and persistent, even when Drew does not seem to show any interest. From their first encounter, she spews random motivational pieces of wisdom like,
"We are intrepid. We carry on."
Through her appearance, her choice of clothing also signals her character as easygoing. Although dressed down, she remains feminine and wears a red hat that makes her stand out. She is never heavily made up. She also carries a sling bag, no matter the function, indicating that her character is more pragmatic than she is superfluous in how she goes about her day. At the end of the movie, Drew goes through an entire character arc in which he has developed as a character. He starts out sad and depressed and comes out hopeful about life. However, this does not happen on Drew's own prerogative, but rather through Claire. Claire remains the same bubbly character, whose actions act as a catalyst for Drew to step out of his comfort zone. Claire coaxes Drew to a random trip in the middle of the night to catch the sunrise. She accompanies him to go urn shopping, and she even gives him a map that takes him on the cross-country trip, leading him to a journey of self-discovery. This ultimately allows Drew to finally cry, something his character has repeatedly said throughout the movie he never does. But more importantly, Claire helps Drew by showing an interest in him. She breathes into Drew new excitement and changes his perspective about what life can offer. However much she's appeared in the movie, compared to Drew, her character development is shallow, and her only redeemable arc being that she leaves her distant boyfriend to be with the male lead. It is evident here that Claire's primary arc is as a catalyst for the narrative, which is the male protagonist's growth and development. Manic Pixie Dream Girls are not just exclusive to live-action movies, they appear in animation too. Up centers around rigid old Carl and his hesitation with accepting change. Ellie as his partner softens that side of Carl and opens him up to new adventures beyond his bubble. Carl goes through an entire character arc where he transforms into being accepting of new people in his life and opens to new adventures, whereas Ellie, appearing only in the first few minutes of the movie, grows old with Carl, but her character does not go beyond being Carl's adventurous, bubbly romantic partner. In Video Girl I, Yota is heartbroken after finding out his crush, Moemi, is in love with his best friend. I appears before Yota as a video girl come to life. Her line, "I'll cheer you up," which is also the title of her video, embodies her entire arc as a character. She has no other purpose but to fall in love with Yota, comfort him in distress, and help him find his self-worth after feeling rejected by Moemi. As we begin to look at summer from 500 Days of Summer, it is also important to note how, culturally, this term has been misused in the media. Rabin, the critic who coined the term, have deemed the term to be inherently reductive, and goes on to say, "The trope of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a fundamentally sexist one, since it makes women seem less like autonomous, independent entities than appealing props to help mopey, sad white men self-actualize." Within that context, the phrase was useful precisely because, while still fairly flexible, it also benefited from a certain specificity. But by giving an idea a name and a fuzzy definition, you apparently also give it power, and in my case, that power spun out of control. This is especially true for Summer in 500 Days of Summer, as the character is often misanalyzed as a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Here's why. The movie was made with the intention to break down what the trope is, and how, as the audience, we are susceptible to multiple interpretations through different narratives. Its motives to deconstruct Summer and how Summer doesn't fit the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope was often lost among the wider audience, as the film was solely told from Tom's point of view. At first glance, it is easy to assume why she does fit the trope. Summer is beautiful, but throughout the movie, we can see how, through Tom's eyes, Summer's wants and needs are often glossed over.
So you have a boyfriend?
No,
Why not?
because I don't want one.
Come on.
I'm just tired.
Okay.
I'm not really looking for anything serious.
Summer is a nuanced character. She is complex and makes decisions based on external factors in her upbringing. She is fundamentally flawed, like any and most characters, and makes selfish decisions, even if it means bringing detriment to Tom's character. Having these layers in Summer's character opposes the very definition of what makes a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Webb, the director of 500 Days of Summer, claims, "The movie is very intentionally told from the perspective of the guy, and we wanted to identify his shortcomings. He wasn't observing the inner life of the Summer character. He projected on her. We think of that as romantic, but really it's just intellectual laziness." During the movie's release in 2009, culturally, Deschanel has been a prominent brand of quirky femininity or adorkability. As the star of New Girl, she is often identified as a darling of the indie scene due to her iconic sartorial style, music, and repertoire. Within context of the era, Deschanel's reputation as the attractive, adorkable love interest typical in romantic films, it is easy to assume why she is often labeled as a manic pixie. Over time, we can see how this trope has been rightly and wrongly used in ascertaining what we think a character is. Culture is a key role in how we read certain stereotypes that ultimately dictates our opinion of what we see portrayed in media. Media plays such a huge role in how the audience would perceive what feminine and masculine roles are. Through representation, collective factors like cultural, conceptual maps, language, communication, and even ideologies are taken into consideration when the audience is interpreting the image presented to them.
What are you?
I'm a mouse. Duh.
Looking specifically into the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, we ask ourselves, can this trope exist before the millennial era? Rabin himself suggests that Manic Pixie Dream Girls are the embodiment of the millennial male fantasy. One way of looking at this trope, given that Manic Pixies are one-dimensional and serve only a limited purpose in the movie, an updated aspect to this trope can be that she does not necessarily have to fit within the structural conventions of beauty. They ascribe to their own standards of attractiveness, be it with their colourful hair, their quirky personality, or erratic sense of style, like a red hat. As for the Manic Pixie's role of servicing soulful, brooding men, this trope exists because at the time captures the zeitgeist of its current men, a generation that has been facing a shift in opinions of what it means to be a nice guy. In retrospect, popular nice guys like Ted Mosby and Ross Geller might not seem so nice anymore. This growing awareness of the nuances of dated entitlement opens the doors for a more critical evaluation of what a trope is supposed to mean and what actions are acceptable or not. Arguably, this is also an aftermath of the 2018 Me Too movement. As time goes by, tropes undergo an evolution. The nuances in perceived tropes are no longer one-dimensional. It is evident that female leads nowadays no longer fall into the mold of being hypersexualized and can come in different shapes and sizes, colored or from ethnic backgrounds. Today, there is a wide shift in the depiction of women as stronger female leads are becoming the norm, characters with complex traits and very human flaws. In the end, it doesn't really matter what the stereotype is, no matter the visual signifier or roles that the characters play. Both women and men are complex, and understanding that is just a matter of shifting what we culturally understand our perceived roles are. Clementine from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind says it best.
I just think of a concept, or I complete them, or I'm gonna make them alive. But I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours.
I remember that speech really well.